offensive holding penalty that was called on James Bradberry on that crucial third down. It was when the Chiefs, when it was tied 35-all on their final drive. John, what were your thoughts on the call itself and I guess in general about it?
Just random thing that I heard. I think it was Rob Ninkovich brought this up. I don't know if you saw this. The genius of Bill Belichick, and this is just those tiny small things that like nobody thinks about. But of course, Bill Belichick has thought of this exact scenario happening. Reportedly, in playoff games, if the other team was going to wear white, Bill Belichick would require his players wear white gloves because any hand things, it's just a little harder to tell. The Eagles wore black gloves and the Chiefs were obviously wearing white. And once again, that's just something that I'm sure Bill Belichick, maybe Andy Reid, some of those guys who've been around forever, maybe they learned that from somebody way back in the day that a Nick Sirianni is not going to know.
Tricks of the trade.
And exactly. That's something that like you don't notice it, you don't think about it, but somebody mentions it to you. And because this is a win at all costs league, even something as small as making the hands just a little tougher to tell what's happening on a white jersey, Bill Belichick and those kind of guys do that stuff. Anyway, so I just thought that was kind of funny because I wonder maybe that would have influenced the call because it was a close one. Like it was kind of tight. That said, in terms of the actual call, I think it was holding. James Bradberry admitted that he held. JuJu said that he held. Everybody, like the refs, said that they held. So I think everybody's kind of in agreement that it was a hold. And I've seen a lot of takes of people online. And I just want to say I am a Cowboys fan and I hate the Eagles. So if you think I'm biased, whatever, take this for what you will. But I think I'm kind of fair when it comes to, I've said this many times, even when the Cowboys lose, if you're blaming the refs, you didn't do well enough in the game, because if you played better throughout the whole game, then a call by the refs wouldn't have influenced it, because if you're up by 20 at that point, then who cares what the refs call, because they can make a bad call and you still won the game because you did better early. If your defense didn't allow 35 points prior to that play, then, that's all I'm saying. That said, on this specific play, once again, I think it was a hold. I think it was the right call. I've seen a lot of people make the argument that you can't call that in this moment. Okay, well, what do you want? Like, do you want the game to be called correctly, or is it the last 2 minutes we want to throw the rules out the window and just let them play? I understand some people are saying it's ticky-tack, it's a close call. Is it a foul or not? If it's a foul, then the ref should have to call it, because if you're on the other side and you're a fan of the other team and that doesn't get called, because Mahomes threw it to JuJu, and if we're being real, if JuJu doesn't get held there, he might have gotten there and scored a touchdown. We don't know. But all I'm saying is the people who are saying you can't call that there because of the ticky-tack nature of it, is it a foul or not? If it's a foul, then the refs did their job. They're supposed to make the calls. Like, there's so many times that me and you and all these NFL fans have seen blown calls happen, and we complain about the NFL officiating for not making the right calls. In this one, they made the right call. I can't blame the refs for that one. You can blame the refs maybe for the other stuff. There was the controversial, like you said, Devonta Smith thing. I think it was right for the most part. I think it was kind of impossible to overturn it. I thought they called the Miles Sanders thing correctly.
Yeah.
I think there was a Dallas Goedert one that maybe was a little questionable. But
I think Chiefs challenged that, failed to challenge, and it went Philly's way.
Yeah. And so for the most part, I thought the refs had a good game, and I thought it was at least nice because compared to some of the previous games in the conference championship that were terrible, I thought this was a pretty clean called game. So yeah, if it's a foul, they have to call that there. I don't understand the people who are saying you can't call that there.
I'm on the same mindset as you, and yeah, what I want to get to is what you kind of already alluded to. It annoys me when people are saying you can't call that, or basically wanting it ruined the game or whatever. Well, sorry, the refs, their job is not to provide you entertainment. Their job is to referee. Plain and simple. The ref's not sitting there thinking, oh man, if I throw this flag though, the Eagles won't get a chance. So let me just not throw this flag. That's not what they're taught to do. That's how we should be teaching them. So, and even the Eagles, you mentioned Bradberry mentioned that he admitted it was a hold. None of them made mistakes. Even Brandon Graham, you mentioned not getting in that position. He said we shouldn't have put ourselves in that position. That's his literal quote I'm reading off NFL on CBS. So there you go. Stop crying about it. It was still a great Super Bowl nonetheless. Sorry we didn't get an amazing finish, but sometimes that happens. It's football. Eagles, they did have, timeout management was an issue. I don't know if you noticed this too. I didn't should mention this, but for most of the game, they were really running that play clock down. I know they were trying to protect the lead in the second half, but it seemed like, they were taking a while to get the plays set up and get the ball snapped. It was a lot of very close calls in regards to getting a delay of game. And I think they actually got at least one, probably two, but it was very close. So I'm glad we're on the same page. I was sitting here, I was like, I just for those at home, I had not really asked John's opinion. John only asked mine, but good to know we're on the same page, and that's why you're my co-host. Anyway, but go ahead.
And I do just want to pose too to the people who maybe disagree and like, all that kind of stuff. If you're saying you can't call it there, would you feel the same way if it was an offensive holding call on the offensive line? Would you feel the same way if there was an offsides, if there was a false start, any other penalty? Because I feel like sometimes people get a little weird about defensive holding because there's all this weird, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as impactful to some people. But it's like, would you be okay if, like, I don't know, JuJu just straight up like crossed the line of scrimmage before the play even starts and like got a head start and then they called that? Or like, would you be saying you can't call that in that moment because of the time that it happens and the gravity of the game? I don't know. Once again, I find it ridiculous that some people are actually saying that. I saw Kurt Warner tweet about this too, and he was like, what do you mean you can't call that there? You're supposed to call that there. Like, you can't just not enforce the rules the final 2 minutes because it's the Super Bowl. Because if you do that, then if you allow stuff like that to happen, you're just helping the other team. Like, that's just how it goes. You're helping the team who's doing the thing that's against the rules.
We've both been on the wrong. Both of our teams have been on the wrong call, so we know. And we've done the podcast. So people can probably go back to that conference championship game where Packers, they lost. We can say they lost because Kevin King held, and I even said that. I was like, I didn't agree with. I agreed with that. It was a hold. And it just sucked that it was called then because it wasn't called earlier. But nonetheless, in that moment, it was a hold, plain and simple.
Cowboys did it too this year. Donovan Wilson, he went and held. They got a sack on the play. He commits a holding call, completely pointless because Brock Purdy couldn't even have made the throw if he wanted to. But per the rules, it doesn't matter if Brock Purdy couldn't make the throw because it was holding. Like, that's just how it is. And then the Niners, instead of having to kick a field goal, They score a touchdown, and obviously we saw how close that game was.
People that say, well, the ball wasn't catchable, but that doesn't apply to defensive holding. It doesn't matter if the ball was catchable or uncatchable. And even then,
exactly.
Let's be honest, people. You can probably go back and see all the PI calls. There's been a few of them that were uncatchable in the regular season, and they were still called. So it was uncatchable rule. That rule is kind of like dissolving. I feel like it's just not being relevant. It was just brought up because it was convenient for this argument.